Well, thanks for joining me today. I'm Don Ward. We have a program that we're about to introduce to you. It's a meshing of many programs. Some of you may have heard of Business Model Canvas or Strategizer.com and how they break things into your business into different components and building blocks. And it's almost like putting them on Post-it notes, and you can move them around to determine how your company is going to be shaped and formed. But what I want to do today is just give you kind of an overview. I sat down, I gave myself some notes so that I could have some structure for you, because the program itself is going to have a lot of structure. You're going to be able to take a lot of notes and have a copy of the workbook. So there's a lot for us to really cover today. But one of the first things I want to cover is that when you go into business, you are going to be forced to have to get relational. Bottom line, you're going to have to get relational, because business goes through pipelines. The pipelines, those are the trusted relationships you build. And you need more than just relationships with vendors, with your channels of distribution, with your investors, with your employees or your management team. You need relationships with people that can be of service to the people you serve. And that can mean anything. So whether you're an IT company or you're in healthcare, it's good to have some really incredible vendors that your customers will need, but you might not. That could be landscape, that could be security, that could be plumbers, it could be air conditioning companies and electricians. The thing is that if you become a hub, somebody that everybody knows has good people already in their life that they have vetted, they have used, they have referred and had thank yous coming back for, if you become that hub yourself, suddenly you're the business of choice for somebody to do business with. Because they go, well, not only do I get to do business with them, they do a great job, but every time I need somebody for any kind of a purpose or function, I can call the owner of that company, the salesperson of that company, whoever's in charge of business development, and they will tell me right up front who I need for that particular problem, that particular day. So let's start there. Become a hub. I have a book out called Hubs and Spokes. Spokes are attendees at other people's events. The hubs are the ones that host them. But there's a lot of different variations of hubs, and we're not going to get into that lesson today. But I do want to say this. A hub is a center of influence. If this is your company and you're envisioning a company that you'll permit to grow, to even be global, you're going to become a hub whether you want to or you don't want to. So the time to get used to that idea is now. The time to get used to making networking a lifestyle and not a thing to do on your work list is now. So I want to cover some things. There are going to be key partners that you're going to need when you're in business. And literally, those could be shareholders, those could be members, those could be vendors, joint venture partners, investors. There's just so many different avenues that you can go. Banks, for example. Now, vendors, they are partners because your success and their success are intertwined. So you always want to be thinking about how you're treating your vendors, because they're more important to you than you know. And depending on your business model may be one where you are out and you are shipping things using third parties. You're using Amazon, or you're using FedEx drivers, or you're using UPS. Believe it or not, the face of those drivers is the face of your company. And so you want to have great relationships with your vendors and with those that are helping you to distribute or provide your services and products. So yes, vendors are key partners. Most people don't think of vendors as partners, and that's why they don't act like partners, and they come and they go. Don't make your relationship based upon the dollar amount at the bottom line of the contract, because if they can outperform somebody else, they do it with a spirit of excellence, and they make your company look good when they show up at the front door delivering your product. That's more important than whether they beat out the competitor by a couple $1,000s for a bid to be your supplier. Look at their record. Now, do you need a customer service department? That's another thing that we'll get into in the training today. And the thing is, if they're the ones that are out in the field, you might not need a customer service department, but you might need a liaison between you, your client, and your shippers. So there's a lot of things when you start to reverse engineer your business, which is what most people are failing to do. Reverse engineering is knowing the end from the beginning and the beginning from the end. And it's critical because that's how you put mile markers together. That's how you're able to establish where you're going. That's how you're going to know if you're on track to get there when you had speculated you would get there. You say, well, we're going to be a $5 million company in 3 years. We're going to be a $15 million company in 5 years and a $50 million in 10. Well, if you've set those goals ahead, you can tell if you're on track to get there. But if you didn't set them ahead, you don't have a clue. And if you did set them ahead, you can reverse engineer from that projected, let's say it was $50 million by year 10. Well, there's a way to get there, and you have to know what is it going to take in terms of systems, in terms of, let's say you actually deliver your own products. How many trucks? How many drivers? You really have to be able to reverse engineer it. And if you're going to have a lot of trucks, you're going to have a lot of sales to pay for the trucks and pay for the drivers and their health benefits. I mean, it really gets down to really nitpicking, but it's important. So what I'm going to do today is kind of just cover an overview to let you know there is more content than you could imagine that we're going to be sharing with you for a ridiculous offer. And the ridiculous offer is because we have a heart for entrepreneurs. I want to take 1 second and just say, once upon a time, I had too many businesses. And when I had too many businesses, it was very hard to focus. It wasn't just a matter of time management, it was a matter of energy management. And then I came out of a marriage that left me with $500,000 in consumer debt. Well, guess what? Then I ended up going, oh, on top of this, I need to be a musician again and start making money every day. On top of this, I guess I'm going to go ahead and accept this offer to work with this radio station and do that full-time. I had 3 full-time careers. You want to talk about wearing a lot of hats? I was an importer from Germany of photomedical equipment, a.k.a. tanning beds. And I was also a private labeler using a company out in St. Paul. And we had 15 lines of sun care products. I was a co-founder of 3 trade magazines. 30 years later, they all exist. Tanning Trends, Today's Image, Looking Fit. Also involved in the Only Trade Association. I was flying around the country and lecturing on photobiology and on marketing. And what I'm getting at here is not telling you what my accomplishments were, but telling you what my workload was, because I was stupid enough to wear all the hats. You can't wear all the hats and stay sane. There are 2 reasons for stress. Just what if? 2 reasons for stress. 1, you're doing what you are not gifted to do. 2, you're doing what, take this as an example. You're doing what God isn't asking you to do now. You might have felt like God asked you to do this for a season of time, or He might have shown you that one day you're going to do this and you're trying to do it today. You have stress. So we want to help you minimize stress and show you how to access virtual advisory boards. That's right. There are people out there with no clue that for the price of a seat or even a membership, they could join somebody's mastermind, and you've got all these people with all these different skill sets and talents. And guess what? You have access to them, because these are cooperative bodies. They're like think tanks. They're learning organizations, but they're sharing organizations. I run an organization like that now, CEO Clubs Florida, and we come together to share who and what we know. Tap into masterminds in your area. How many is too many to be a part of? I don't know. How many people do you want to have in your life that are smarter than you in a lot of different areas that you can call upon, and it's not costing you? So become a part of a mastermind. If you read Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, first paragraph, everybody in business needs a mastermind group to be a part of. That was a priori knowledge with him. Now, where I want to take you here is I had made some notes about vendors and key partners and being a hub. I think I've kind of covered that. But you have to know when somebody can fill a void. You have to know who the right person is to fill a void or a need. And if you don't have the connections to do that, then you need a connector in your life. Go out when you're networking, and when you're networking, instead of asking for things or talking about your products, you might want to ask for 3 things. Go up to somebody else first and start off and be in contribution and go, so what are you working on? And what do you need next? Or ask them questions that cause them to speak from the heart, not the head. Because you can get into a lot of relationships where from the head you guys think you get along, but it turns out later on you'd want to kill each other. And that's because in the natural, opposites attract, and in the spiritual, like attracts like. What if? And so I'm giving you these examples because a lot of times people aren't bringing spiritual components into their business. And believe it or not, there are spiritual laws. Sowing and reaping. Can you argue with that? You know, accountants out there that are working with atheists, they believe in tithing because they don't know why, but for some reason, their client starts actually being more prosperous each year because they were doing charitable giving with 10% of their wealth. And so what we want to do is give you more than just a line item. This is what you do next. This is what you do next. That's, by the way, called business sequencing. Business sequencing is our gift because a lot of companies are doing all the right things in the wrong sequence. And we don't want you doing the wrong things in the wrong sequence. I've gone in and played role of interim CEO for a company, and they were doing, for the same product, they're spending money on research and development, and they're marketing the product. Well, if you've done your research and development, why are you still spending money there? Put all that money over here in marketing because that makes sense. You've already taken the risk. You've already developed the product. You're taking it to market, but you're still doing research and development. Something was wrong with that. And that's what we want to do. We're the extra set of eyes that can come in and help you. And yes, the trainings can do it, or you can even work with us. We have so many different experts around the country, top Fortune 50 people. And if it's not my genius, it's not my job. So I call up one of my team members. If it's not your genius, it's not your job. The point that I was making earlier about you don't need to spend a lot of money to have a team. All you need to do is be part of a mastermind group, for example. Well, guess what? There are different kinds of teams, and we want to teach you about that in this program. There are capital development teams. There are virtual teams. There are home teams. There are management teams. Now, management teams are people that you're paying. They're on your salary. Well, for the sake of this particular video, we're talking, in theory, you're probably somebody who's just coming off with a napkin, or maybe you've been in business for 3 years, but you've hit a ceiling and you don't know where to go next. That's who this particular program that we're offering today is going to be really addressing, those people that are in the earlier stages. You can't afford a management team. So why not have a virtual one? Do you know that about 14 years ago, I ran into the first time that I had ever heard of virtual CFOs. I said, well, what's a contract look like? And they showed me the contract. They said, well, for the first 2 years of the contract, we're playing a role for X number of dollars a month. We're just doing oversight. You're still going to do your own bookkeeping or hire a bookkeeper, but you need somebody to come in who has the eyes to recognize, wow, they're not on track with where they're trying to go, and looks at the numbers and they can tell you why. Maybe it's that your profit margins are wrong. If you're going into business, you're probably going into business because you found a problem that every time you run into it, you go, golly, I wish somebody would take care of it. Well, that's good. That means you're on the right track. Because if the problem that you're on earth to solve doesn't aggravate you, it's probably not the problem you're on earth to solve. And so where we want to help you is to be able to focus on accessing resources and talent pools that you don't even know exist. You know that you can't receive what you can't perceive? Well, until now, some of you watching this video can't perceive that there are people out there that'll help you, and they're not looking for a piece of your company. They're not even looking for a check. They're saying, you know what, you've got services I need, I've got services you need. You want to swap? You know, that's a currency. In this program, we're going to teach you about currencies that you've never thought of before. Favor, that's a currency. And the more that you spend it, the more you have. Faith, it's the same thing. That's one of the greatest currencies of all. And the more you spend of that, far more is what you have waiting in your reservoir. Call it your faith account. And you can get into barter. And I had a company that for 20 years, for the services that my company offered, we were a personal services business. I bartered for chiropractic. I bartered for dental. I bartered for restaurants, gift certificates. I bartered for radio. I bartered for gas with gas stations. There wasn't anything that I couldn't use my services and barter for. Well, one of my organizations, CEO Clubs, I've got a member that has a barter company. So guess what? I can barter for vacations and cruises. And so there's things that you're sitting here going, wow, I don't know how I'm going to have the money for this or that. but you actually probably have a service or product that somebody else needs. What if? And if that's the case, it's probably something you can barter. And we can get into all those different forms of barter. I'm going to give you some examples in a little bit of what favor can do. I have one company that everything in that company was paid for with favor. You want a spiritual law that I made a reference to? If it's a God idea, what if? Whatever your belief is, just say what if. What if? 1, 2, 3. What if? If it's a God idea, God picks up the check. If it's your idea, you do. So to prove this, I have a company that's 3 years old right now, and everything that we have needed, whether it was testimonial videos, whether it was websites, whether it was branding, whether it was boardrooms, everything that you can imagine, we got through favor because I had built trusted relationships with people. There's very little. I have photographers at all my events. Do I have to pay them? No. I have favor. They're so happy to have a seat at the table with all these other CEOs. They're doing the photography for me. What do you have that the world needs that you can make an exchange that's favorable? Because you're going to look at it. If you have a service business, most of what you have is product. Most of what you have there is profit. And if it's profit, it's really not costing you all that much. So can you barter to get things that you need? Yes. There are a lot of people that have gone their entire life hearing that it takes money to make money. It helps. Is it required? No. And I want to give you a little bit of hope today that you're going to learn some ways that you're able to do all kinds of things you never could have imagined without a dollar bill. That's right, without a dollar bill. Who's teaching that to you? Nobody. So where do these lessons come from? Well, one, they come from experience. But two, somebody had to show me that these were realities and possibilities. So mentors that I've had in my life, they showed me how they were able to do incredible things with no money. And I'm going, really? Well, they had to show it to me for me to see it so that I could receive it and I could benefit, and I can turn around now and go to you and say, let me show you how to do things without the resources. Yes, you're going to get to a point where you're going to hit a ceiling and you're going to need capital. Here's a rule in business. It always takes more time and more money than what you have figured on. Let me tell you, that will never not be the case. And so if you take that as an assumption, that means at some point in time you're going to need money. Don't do what I did. My first company, though we had about 630 salons, you know how I grew? I used debt. The word usury is what we use to refer to debt. You know what the word usury means? Bite of the serpent. Bite of the serpent. So why would you want to use debt? Because what happens is you create this machine that eats money, and if you're in a cyclical business or a seasonal business, and you're going to learn the difference between those two, and that's not rocket science. Let me just give it to you quick. Seasonal means that there's a certain time of every year your business is going to do great. There's a certain time of every year you're going to be going, oh my God, I can't wait till the next season comes. And a cyclical business is more like, take construction. You'll have 4 years of boom, and you'll have 4 years of, oh my God, you were building 400 houses, and now you're building 4 houses a year. And cyclical, those are really tough kinds of businesses to be in, but there's ways to get through them. And one of the ways you get through them is having favor in those cases with your banker, letting them see and being transparent and saying, this is where we're at, this is what isn't happening, so can we work together? I had a banker that worked with me for 7 years. I went to him the day after I was thinking about going bankrupt, and I said to him, Mr. Davis, I remember Art Davis, he was at the Bank of Ocean City. I said, Art, yesterday I drove to D.C., and I was getting ready to go bankrupt with all 4 of my corporations. And on the way back, I found Jesus, and I had a peace, and all of a sudden, I just knew that I was to come to you and be transparent, Mr. Davis, and tell you that I want to work this out, and I will bust my butt if it takes 7 years. Guess what? It took 7 years. But the thing was, by being in communication, here's another thing. If you do get into using equity and other people's money, OPM, you want to have a relationship. You want to have constant communications with the money. People don't think about that. And so they go back to the money at a certain point in time. They go, I need more money. Well, in the meantime, you never gave them updates on the money. You didn't stay in relationship because you got the money. You just went off on your own, leaning on your own understanding. We want to eliminate your leaning on your own understanding. This program is going to give you a support group that you don't know exists right now. But let me tell you, 11,000 of my closest friends would be happy for a fee, and many of them would do it for free in exchange for knowing that I would be there to help them if I helped you. Isn't that what business is supposed to be about? Helping others to help others? And you don't want a win-win scenario in business. You want a win-win-win-win. And that's another way that we are able to help you, is to show you how your vendor can have a winning scenario with you. Your employees can have a winning scenario with you. Your customers should have a winning scenario with you. And you should be able to win in the process. That's 4 wins. Everybody teaches win-win, but nobody's teaching win-win-win-win-win. Once again, if you haven't gone through this in your own businesses as a consultant, you're no better than a teacher or a professor who's never done anything. You're teaching out of books. We're teaching out of books from the standpoint that any leader is a reader. So yeah, there's thousands of books that I've probably processed in my life, so those are virtual mentors. But I've had 48 incredible mentors, and a bunch of them were billionaires, and I want to share everything. Most of those mentors died, so they have to live on through me. I should be retiring this year. I'm a few weeks away from 65. You know what? I feel more energized. I am more excited about where I'm going because all those mentors, they comprised, each of them was a stream that feeds the river of life in me. Now it's my job to share it with you. And after 14 years of sharing it one-on-one with people, it's time to share this with the masses. So we invite you to bring your friends in, and we'll have rewards for you and extra discounts for you, those that are going to be involved in helping us with our growth. If you help us with our growth, I promise you, you're going to find extra favor with us in helping you with your growth. Now, I want to look at my notes again because there's so many points to this. This is kind of interesting. I put a note down. One of the wisest things you can do, a friend of mine just got back from Richard Branson's island. And William DeTemple, if you see this video, you were one of my mentors. And William DeTemple, he was down there for 6 days. He was writing a book. He needed 2 more billionaires to interview. He said, I'm going to interview 15 billionaires, and I am going to ask them to tell me the story of what it took to get to the $100 million mark. Why the $100 million mark? When you hit the $100 million mark, a company is self-sustainable. You know, when you're growing a company, it starts where you're bearing the reproach of the primitive, and there's all this darkness and all these foreboding forces and the unknown. And then you get this light. Oh, some people will call it a dream or a vision. Some people will call it a creative idea. But you'll get this light, and all of a sudden you go, that's it. That's what I got to do. And then you start researching, you start doing your homework, and it starts taking form. Eventually, you'll build the structures to where the last company that I owned, I was living in Florida for the last 6 months that I owned it and found that my business was doing better with me living down here. It made it easy to sell it because it was doing well without me. You don't think the next buyer was going, wow, here's a company that works without the boss? That's what you want to be building this to. But my next thing is you also want to be building this to one day sell to something far bigger than yourself. Don't get so married to your business and go, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. If somebody comes along and offers you a lot of money, just think, you can go out and start other things. You could even do the same thing in another area. You know, don't ever tell yourself that I am going to die doing this business and that I'm creating this business to give to my kids. I have a lot of wealth managers in my life. They work with people that are doing over $1 billion. Michael Shindamo, if you're watching this, I'll give you a little plug. Fator's family office, or maybe Roman Ivan Nikoski, and he's got Skylight Wealth offices. These guys work with people that have net worths of $500 million to about $2 billion. And guess what? Those companies are self-sustaining. But none of those companies do the kids actually want to take over. Oh, sure, they want to spend the money. But they really don't want to do what mom and dad did. And the grandkids for sure don't want to do what grandma and grandpa did. They don't want to take over the business. So, if it comes down to where you say, I want to focus on succession planning, how many early stage development consultants and coaches can help you with succession planning? The reason I can is because I'm going to refer you to the best in the business. Everything that I'm tied to has the answer within them. In fact, a very famous coach, if I said his name to you right now, he called me up one day, and I'm not going to get into the whole story of what took place, but right up front, he kind of blessed me before he asked me to help him solve a problem he had. And his first comment is, well, Don, the reason I called you is because you always have the answer, and the answer is always found inside of someone you have a trusted relationship with. He wasn't saying I always know the answer. He said, I always know who does have the answer. You want to become one of those resource people. Einstein didn't write everything down in his head. He said, if I know where it is, I'll look it up. It's the same thing. I can't remember every email and phone number of every famous person or every brilliant person that I know. So I keep it where? In my laptop, just like you do. We have to build pools of connections. We have to build pools of knowledge. We have to know. When somebody comes to me and they say, Don, I'm fighting cancer. I go, it was cured a long time ago. I want you to look into this video, read this book, and then I'm going to direct you to somebody. First, I have to expand their mind to see that it was cured a long time ago, and then I know of 8 cures for cancer. It's just illegal to cure in the U.S. And if that shocks you, and for some reason somebody in your family's going through something, for no money, send me a note. I want to send you the information so you can get the help too. I've already defeated it once. Chicken Soup for the Soul author, a friend of mine, Barry Spelcheck, he just spoke for one of my groups a couple weeks ago, and he's been through it twice, stage 4. Another person that brought me into one of the businesses I'm in right now, he's in the middle of his second battle with stage 4 throat cancer. You can beat anything, and the answer for everything you need is already on planet Earth. So now getting back to William DeTemple interviewing Richard Branson, it came down to this. He said, man, last 6 days has been incredible. I said, let me guess what you learned. He goes, let you guess what I've learned. I said, yeah, a friend of mine sold Richard Branson his first 2 jumbo jets for Virgin Airways, a guy named David Stacy. He's a British chap, and I was one of the first people he met in the United States, and he came over here, and he goes, oh, so what did he have to say? I said, well, he said, Richard says what I do is I hire integrity. I hire the best of the best. I give them all a piece of the company, and I take my hands off and go fishing. That's right. If you get incredible people, a boss has to micromanage. A leader delegates, and a leader puts his trust in the people. If you hired somebody, let them do what you hired them to do. Get out of the way. You can do your supervision and your oversight, but just get out of the way. Because once again, if it's not your genius, it's not your job. Now let me see if there's some other key things. Other types of partners that you can have could be media and marketing companies. Yes, there's banks. You want to be putting another little thing into your setup, and when you're laying out your business, you want to go, what are my key activities? And so key activities, well, depends what you're doing. Are you inventory based? If you are, you're going to need a COO, somebody to handle operations. You're going to be inventory control. There's going to be a buyer. There's going to have to be probably a purchasing agent. I mean, it gets, whatever you do, your business model is going to determine the types of things that you're going to be able to that you're going to have to hire and bring into your company, or outsource. Who isn't outsourcing today? Do you know how to outsource? Do you know what resources are available? We do. So that'll be something else we can get into. Key activities. I've got so many notes on that, I'm not going to kill you with it. Now, the other thing is your company product-centric? Is everything focused around a product or products? That is a different business model than a company that everything is centered around services. And so we'll get into the distinction of how you run them, how you set them up, how you build the teams, how you onboard. Onboarding is an art form. And in fact, when you're building a company, there's all these things that we're going to have to get into with you about intellectual property. You know why I'm rambling like this? Because the more things I start talking about, the more things you start going, man, I wasn't thinking about that. Oh, wow. Well, one of the things that coaches and consultants are famous for is telling you so much stuff that you're overwhelmed. And they tell you it for 2 reasons. One reason is noble. is so that it makes you humble, because you start going, wow, the more I hear about this, the less I know. Good, okay? That's great. That's a great place to be. The other reason they do it is because it makes them sound like there's something incredible and you're going to need them and be dependent on them. You don't have to be dependent on anybody. And number one, wisdom doesn't come from the counsel of one person, one company. It comes from the counsel of many. If I become a part of your life, or my team becomes a part of your life, I'm hoping that you have more me's and more other people who have teams like myself and other critical path connections that you need, because that's going to be the key to your success. Don't ever think that you can sit at home and everything's going to come to you. You've got to walk out the front door. Okay, you can ask, seek, and knock on your knees, and that's great. That's the right thing. If you don't start your business on your knees, you'll end it on your knees. I promise you. I don't care what worldview, what religion you believe in. You know what I just said if you're an entrepreneur. And the thing is, then you actually have to go out and ask, seek, and knock. So there's a way to ask, seek, and knock. Earlier I said when you go out networking, ask for 3 things. I didn't tell you the 3 things yet. Those 3 things are ask for wisdom, mentors, and you're always upgrading a team. When you're in business, think of yourself as a Major League Baseball team or a Major League Football team or basketball. Any sports team is always looking for new talent. They're always in recruiting mode. Okay, so that's going to be critical. Stay in recruiting mode. And just because somebody was there with you day one doesn't mean that they're capable of performing at the level of where your company is now at or where your company is going at. You always want to have somebody in the back of your mind that can step in and be a far better version of the person that you have sitting in that position now. It's just business. This isn't personal. The relationships are personal. And those people, when you replace them, you just find them a different slot where they can work. And if they don't like that, then let them go off on their own. Don't find that you have to be committed for life to anyone when it comes to the business that you have been given to take to the world. You have to be faithful to the vision itself, faithful to your family because they're the one depending on it succeeding, and faithful to God, the one that gave you the vision. That's where your faithfulness is. When it comes to personnel, when it comes to team members, treat them so good they don't want to leave. Help empower them, give them educational tools so that if they do leave, they can leave and do something better. You know, there's so many different avenues I could go down just in leadership. Is that something I was going to talk about today? No, it's not. But last month I had a key leader, a symphony conductor who was in town, and he spoke to one of my groups. The guy works with Fortune 100 companies. Do you have access to those types of people? Can you pick up the phone and say, can I get 15 minutes of your time? Well, if you have favor with me because you've done business with me, you have favor with the people in my life I have favor with. I can call them up and say, would you give them 15 minutes? They got a question. But that's there you are again, favor. That's a currency. I just saved you a bundle because some of those guys, they're $5,000 an hour. So if they give you 15 minutes of their time or a half hour of their time because I asked them to, what was the value of that? Could have been $1,250. It could have been $2,500 for that half hour. But you got it because you trusted that I really did know people that you need to know. Well, other people are going to trust you when they come to see that you really do know people they need to know. That's another reason that business does require always being in networking mode. You know, I watch more visions die because all of a sudden they were doing really good. And they get to this ceiling and they're going, oh, you know what they need? Better mentors, yep, better vendors. They need better strategic alliances. They probably need joint ventures, and those things don't get found networking at your pay grade. You have to pay money to network vertically, and it may cost, but it will always pay. So we're trying to mesh into giving you the tools you need to really take this business from the napkin, if that's where you're at today, to the marketplace. And let me tell you, it takes more than a book on strategy. It takes more than what Rollins College entrepreneurial division is going to be able to teach you. It takes the teams that we are attached to already that we can give you access to. I want to kind of close out. I had pages here. There's a designer focus. There's all different kinds of things. There's the conscientious entrepreneur. That's a critical tool. We want your investor, how to relate to them, different consultant focuses, customer segments, where an organization serves one of many customer segments, value propositions. Do you know your unique proposition? Or some people call it a USP, a unique selling proposition. Do you have a superlative? The company I had was Tan Seekers International years ago. In the brand mark itself, it said America's tanning experts. But that didn't stop me from using superlative statements in my marketing to support that, like our closest competition is 93 million miles away, or we may not be number one, but we're way out in front of number two. The thing is I didn't tell them that I was number one. I just told them I was better than whoever was number two. It was for them to go, you know what, that's kind of funny. They must think they're number one. Plant seeds, not of doubt, but of confidence in people. And your marketing can do that. Superlative statements, another name for them, are positioning statements. So what we will be working with you on is how to really shape a powerful 15-word or less mission statement, vision statement, a 15-word or less pitch, so that when you're out networking and somebody says, lay it on me, you can give it to them in 15 words. Personally, I would like to have done this video in 2 words, say, I'm Don Ward, Golden Connector, or I'm Don Ward, Master's Mentor, or I'm Don Ward, Agent of Change, just not small change, or I'm Don Ward, Apostle of Flow. You know, what's flow? Resource facilitator. Come up with a bunch of statements that describe who you are, not just who your company is. Because people are doing business with you, and they do business with your company because they fell in love with you. And the way they'll fall in love with you is if you just give them short sound bites that make them ask questions, that draw them in. They go, because if you talk like I'm doing right now, if I was to do this to you at a networking meeting, you would have left 10 minutes ago. You'd say, this guy is so full of himself, all you do is talk, talk, talk. This is actually a prep video that we're doing right now to let you know just how much is in the program that we're going to be offering you. And I can't wait to tell you what the amount is and to share the offer with you. I still got a lot more notes to cover that I wanted to do with this, but I think we've gone plenty for today, and thank you for all the time that you've invested. But know this, when you have a mentor and they're with you, and they haven't charged you, they invested in you. I hope that you can sense that I'm here to invest in you all the way. And we will have ways that we can show favor to each other and do business with each other and share our connections with each other. And let me close with this. You have a box of puzzle pieces made up of all the people in your life that you built relationships with. I have a box of puzzle pieces. It might be a lot bigger, but it doesn't matter. And we sit down and we say, okay, what have you got in your box? What have I got in my box? It isn't even about, does this puzzle piece help your business? But if it helps somebody you're doing business with, you just cemented a long-term relationship by giving a critical path connection to them that you got through me. Or I have the same situation, somebody in my life that you have a connection they need, and we shared. So let's get this thing done. Let's move ourselves into a cooperative mindset, and cooperation celebrates diversity. Competition persecutes it. So if we can get you into a new mindset, that's going to be another aspect of our program, and how to have open system thinking versus fixed system thinking. Open system, there is no end to the amount of wealth because you create it. Fixed system, the reason that this person's rich is the reason you're poor. That's where it's limited resources. When you have that mindset, you also have limited creativity. So ending out, I want to say thank you very much for letting me rattle. But can you imagine what happens when you and I sit down and we take an hour or we take 2 hours and we really start to dig deep? You cannot believe how many people didn't even know that what they were on earth to do until they had that conversation sitting there at breakfast or lunch with me. It's fun. It's fun pulling out of you your purpose and showing you who you are, and you going, heck yeah, that's me. Well, I hope that right now something has been spoken to you that makes you think there really is more, because there always is more to learn. And that's when you are humble enough to recognize that. That's when you will be successful. Humility is the ability to learn and grow. Thank you. I'm Don Ward.